Hi guys, welcome back to another review. This time around I'm bringing you here something which has been a long time in the coming, and I want to apologize first of all Kitori Audio for taking so long to have done this review. There's absolutely no excuse on my side that I can possibly give, other than my apologies. But anyway, better late than never is my motto. And what do I have here? I've got here the Vampire. And what is the Vampire, you may ask? Well, it's a single BA, something which we don't usually see a lot of. And when we usually talk about single BAs, we always have a tendency of going to or focusing straight away on Etimotic, and obviously no merit can be taken away from Etimotic. They definitely know what they are doing. They probably pioneers and one of the most reputable brands in portable audio gear. That's the reality. But I don't know. And in a second you'll understand where I'm going with this. But it's something that sometimes gets to me, which is when, and I'm just going to sidetrack here a little bit. When the Magic One from a Fool came out, it was met with all sorts of slander and bad talk, and that it was expensive and this and that and blah 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 blah. I ask why? Because it was from a brand that was chi-fi and not, let's say, a more mainstream, more well-established brand like Etimotic. Was it because why? I mean, seriously, why? What justifies paying 200 plus $300 for an Etimotic single BA, and why was $139 for the Magic One too much money? I don't understand. I honestly don't understand. You know, when people just talk out of their, and you excuse my English now, when people just talk out of their ass without knowing what they're talking about, it's something that just absolutely irritates me, be it in my main field of action, which is health and fitness, or be it in audio, which I consider myself still to be an absolute novice. It just irritates me. They don't know their left hand from their right hand, and automatically they are giving opinions. And when you're as fortunate as I have been by virtue of the conditions that I was met with, that if I wanted to be good in this hobby, unfortunately, I had to end up buying a lot of my stuff. But when you have the collection of IMs that I have, it gives me the unique ability to be able to give more precise or more solid opinions about IMs in general than the majority of other people, with maybe the only exception to this will probably be Clinical, only because he owns a store and thus he has also access to unlimited number of IEMs. But in terms of a single individual owning as many IEMs as I own, I question if, honestly, I seriously question if there's anybody that has more IEMs than me. And I'm not trying to make a big deal of it. What I'm trying to say by this is that when people talk about an IEM and compare it with X, Y, and Z, do they have it physically with them? 99% of the times they don't actually have, because they've had to sell that IEM or this or that or whatever. Okay, I have been unfortunate to have to accumulate those IEMs because I just can't get rid of them. It's just not viable to sell them, honestly, because what I'm going to be selling them for is going to be nothing. And on the other hand, it will deter from the whole purpose of me doing reviews in this comparison style of manner that I do. How can I be talking here about now the Vampire and say, oh, the Vampire compared to the DT100 from Audio Sense is this and this and that, but I don't have the DT100 with me already for like a year or 2 or 3 years? No, if I want to compare it, if I want to give an opinion about where this is, I have to have it physically with me. I have to be able to listen to one, listen to the other, and say, okay, or the ST1 from GS Audio, or the Magic One, or the Fire, the FA1. I mean, this is an oldie but goldie. This is one of the granddaddies of single DDs, single BAs. My apologies. If there's anything here that is missing, and obviously I'm working on trying to get that sorted, is I have to get myself an Etimotic. I've got the ER2, the single DD, but I need to get a single BA. I need to get a 4. I really do. and I was kind of wanting to avoid to having to spend all of that money because I just don't see I, however amazingly well tuned it must be. Okay, first of all, I'm going to be raping my ears because that's the way etymotic works. You have to ram the thing into your ear canal as much as you possibly can. So you're basically just violating your ear canal. So that's one thing that will straight away put me away from listening to it many times. And then the value for money is just not there. And I've always been very much a person of value for money. I have to see, okay, this makes sense. Yes, there are, of course, IEMs that I have in my collection which have made absolutely no financial sense, absolute stupidities. And I dare say, even I might have regretted having spent that money. I could have spent it on my family, I could have spent it on myself. Anyway, but again, uh, let's get here onto the ST1, onto the vampire. Now that I've kind of explained where I'm coming from, I think you will now understand the whole review. Single BAs are always met with this kind of approach, which I think is wrong. On the one hand, you have, oh, the price point, blah blah blah, and then the other hand, you have, oh, but the sound is, I can get better sound from a single DD, or I can get a better sound. Guys, it's two totally distinct technologies. Obviously they will sound different, obviously they will be intended for different purposes. A single BA, if what you are wanting for or looking for it for is mids and a very kind of let's say monitoring style of sound, definitely the way to go. Definitely, it's not about quantities of bass, it's not about quantities of mids or quantities of treble. It's by virtue of how it is built physically. Mid-range is where it will be in its element. It's in the mids, it's in the vocals, and that's where you will get the best out of a single BA. It's in the mids. Yes, there are methods of trying to tune that. There are methods of as in the case of etymotic, by introducing it deeper into the ear canal, that you can work around certain deficiencies, as on the bass department, or in the case of the Magic one here, they use that intelligent tuning system of the venting behind the actual driver. Okay, that tunes the IEM to a lower frequency, so you can go get it fit a little bit more bass. Yes, you can perhaps even go down the road of choosing a ultra special single BA to try and do the magic. Fine, but ultimately at the end of the day, remember this: if you are thinking that you're going to get an IEM that's going to crush your ears and have visceral bass and this and this and that, and it's going to sound like I don't know, a KZ Saga bass edition or a Dawn or something in terms of bass, no, look elsewhere. Now, if you want a sweet sounding sound in terms of mids, yes, single BAs will do the job. Fair enough, there are ones which maybe a little bit too much of those mids, or a little bit of too much information in the upper end can become a little bit fatiguing. I'm not going to deny that. But overall, what I can say is every single one of these single BAs here has its merit, has its magic, it has its place. And this review here for the vampire is by no means me wanting to find out who's the winner, but wanting to show that every single one of these has their own kind of crowd. There are definitely different tuning styles here. If I look at, for example, at the Fire is a little bit leaner on the bass, and probably the one that emphasizes the mids and upper mids the most. If on the other hand I go into the Magic one is the one that probably has the more attempt at being kind of like harmony-ish tuned, a little bit more, definitely a lot more bass. The balance between the bass and the mids and the highs, very good. Extension, actually very decent if you consider how intelligent they've worked around those difficulties, those obstacles that are presented. If I go then down to the Audio Sense and to the ST1. The ST1, by the way, actually uses a Sonian 2354, if I'm not mistaken, which is very unusual to see to being used not unusual, but usually it's 29689 from Knowles that is used in single BA applications. or other nodes, but usually it's a 29689. So they use the 2354 here, which is actually quite cool. But be it the audio sense or be it the ST1, they've gone down that you can say style of not diffuse field, not harmony. It's got a leanish kind of bass, but nicely done mids and upper mids, with the ST1 having quite a nice amount of extension actually. Past 10k, it's got a nice little amount of twinklies and sparks and a nice little mid bass slam. And then we have the Vampire, which has also gone down its own way. It's the one that has the most organic, most old school type of sound. So the bass sounds very rich here comparatively to some of the others, not by virtue of having more bass, but by virtue of the mids and the upper mids being the ones that are the most toned down compared to the rest. So there's definitely going to be different type of sound here, or different focus on a different type of crowd of people here. So if you are maybe a little bit adverse to too much highs or too much upper mids, the Vampire will probably be the best one for you. If on the other hand you like that bright sound, and the Fire will be the option. If you want a more neutral balance of everything, probably the ST1 or the Audio Sense, although the Audio Sense is a little bit warmer, would be the most indicated one. If you like the more Harman approach, probably then the Magic one would be the option to go for. But as I said, every single one of them has its thing, has its focus, and it's what I always say. I have no issues with any sort of tunings or whatever. Is it properly done? Has the premise behind it been met? Have they achieved it? Top marks, fantastic, phenomenal, job well done. If they try to do something and they haven't achieved it, then I will say it. No, wrong, forget it. Anyway, Vampire. Let me just focus here, just on the Vampire by itself now. Vampire, as I was saying, very neutral style of bass, but because of the lack of energy, lack of energy, especially in that 4, 5, 6k area there where they've dipped it on purpose, you get this very nice warm bass. I would say vocals, male vocals and some female vocals will probably be the ones that will benefit the most from this style of tuning. If it's a vocal which has a little bit more detail, so if it's a style that needs a little bit more detail up there in that upper mids to treble area, the Vampire is not ultimately in its element. Although having said that, I was surprised by some of the songs that I was listening to it. I mean, for example, let me just give you a concrete example here. My apologies. Okay, Inner City Blues, for example, from Paul Jackson. Very, very nice done. Very nicely done. Soul of a Singer by Jeff Cascaro. Very nice. A little bit more cymbal energy would be nice to have if it had been there, but very nicely done. London, Paris, Cardiff, Dominic Miller. Very nice execution here on the Vampire. I mean, seriously, very nice. You have to listen to this. There's, the single BAs, again, by virtue of what they are, I think, at their best when it's not too complex of a track, not too complex of a music genre. So if you want to listen to rock with this, in my opinion, it's not going to go down well. Honestly, it's not going to go down well. So if it's overly energetic, if it's overly bassy, nah. This needs something which is smooth, relaxed, easy to listen to, non-complex, not too demanding, okay, in terms of having a lot of instruments being played that will put the BA in difficulty, where a DD will handle those transients or that complexity of the transients of different instruments better. This will run out of steam quicker. It's not that it doesn't handle it well, it handles them well, but it just runs out of steam. Yes, it will be probably cleaner if you are able to volume match perfectly and find a DD, let's say a 6mm DD. You're not going to compare this with an 8 or with a 10 or anything of the sort. But if you find a good quality 6mm DD, let's say for the sake of argument a Chu, and if you compare a Chu with this, yes, you will see that the Chu has better bass. Sorry, I was saying Chu. I meant to say the Quark from Moondrop. Yes, the Quark will have more bass than this, without question. But does it have the clarity and overall resolution that a good or well implemented BA like these ones here have? Probably not. Okay, and that's the thing. We have gotten used to getting good quality sound from a DD at a relatively low cost. A Quark is $10. These IEMs here are substantially more than that. Okay, the Fire when it was available was about $90. The DT100 is about $100. The Vampire $80. The ST1 is $110. It's actually it's come down a little bit now. It's about $90 now. The Magic one was 120 something dollars, 129. It's now down to about 90 something dollars. So we are talking money wise, you are getting, as I just mentioned in my previous review, you for the money of the Vampire, you get yourself a Puller Unicron. Which will be the two that will probably satisfy more people? Definitely the Unicron. Let's be frank here, okay? But let's now not murder the Vampire and say, oh no, the Vampire is $80 and and I can get, like I heard many times when it was the case of the Magic one, oh, because I can get a Truth Tears Nova for the same price of the Magic one, and it, but please, guys, compare apples with apples. Put yourself in context. Come on, honestly, seriously. Put yourself in context. We are all grown-ups here. We're all intelligent people, or at least I want to believe that. And when you're going to compare things, and when you're going to say certain things, say it with a proper. It's not that you're not entitled to your opinion. Obviously, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but compare things in a proper, coherent, intelligent manner. That's what I'm saying. Okay. Anyway, I apologize for my ranting, guys, but I'm just so sick and tired of certain things that I hear that ultimately is also one of the reasons why I've been so quiet as I've been now as of late. So, bass, really well done. Mids, phenomenal. Treble extension is where the Vampire is probably a little bit more on the tamer side compared to the others. But what treble exists is still very well done. I honestly didn't find any case where it was where I was flagrantly missing out on treble and saying, oh no, no. I obviously not. Yes, fair enough. Tequila Moon from Jesse J. Yes, I did enjoy it more on the ST1, or I did enjoy it more on the Magic one than I did on the Vampire. But did the Vampire do a good job? Of course it did. Nothing wrong there, because I am able to put myself in on the place of, okay, is it doing a decent job? Yes, it is. Fine, fantastic. Are there better options, or are there options which will be better, pleasant, or more pleasant for a wider variety of people? Yes, there are, but the Vampire is definitely there in that department. Technically, that's the area where I think the Vampire probably doesn't hold its own compared to the rest here. And again, I think it's a two-way thing here. Okay, the timbre and tonality, you can argue that it's nicely done because of that tameness that they have in the upper mids. And in the presence areas, the treble area, fine, but it just doesn't have the same sort of sound stage that you get from the ST1, or the same sort of sound stage that you get from the Fire. Yes, on the Fire can sometimes sound a little bit fake and a little bit, but it doesn't have. The Magic one, again, technically very, very, very good IM, very, very good. Always keeping in mind what we're talking about. Single BAs, guys. Single BAs. Compare apples with apples, okay? So technically that's where I think the Vampire falls a little bit short. Other than that, honestly, job well done. I hope I'm able to do well with KOTORI Audio, that they will forgive me for my delay on this review. Honestly, I really do, because I really would like to maybe try out some other IEMs from them, and I promise that I will be more speedy in my next reviews for KOTORI Audio if I'm given that opportunity. But basically that's it, guys. I just wanted to kind of talk about something which is not, I mean, honestly, I haven't seen anybody talking about single BAs like I'm doing. That's the reality. Again, I'm tooting my own horn, but hey, it is what it is. I honestly, I just sometimes feel just a little bit frustrated because I do so much work for the community, and I get absolutely no, I do it because I really like it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you also want to get a little bit of recognition. And when I look at my channel and I see, 7,000 or 8,000 people, and I look at channels of other people that are not, in my opinion, any and I don't know. I think my silence says everything. Guys, let me just quickly show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay, guys, so let's talk now graphs here for this mega comparison. I'm going to start off here with the graph for the Fire. And as you can see, as expected, kind of very neutral style of bass presentation. A lot of energy in terms of the upper mids and treble. I mean, we're talking about a gain of, my apologies, of roughly 10 dBs, which on its own it's not a lot, but when you consider that you have this kind of leanish bass here from behind, this kind of I don't know, semi diffuse feel, Harmon style, bright tuning. I don't honestly know how to properly call this, but anyway, loads of detail, loads of twinkles and sparkles, a little bit on the fake side. Yes, there is the occasional little bit of sibilance here and there, but overall, the Fire sounds nice. That balance makes it sound more towards the upper mids and treble, even more so than what was already to be expected. But look, it is what it is. The next one I'm putting up here is the Audio Sense. The Audio Sense actually uses a very unusual BA, which I forgot to mention, which is a kind of side exit BA. I forget now the reference. I know it's a Knowles piece. And very nice, honestly, very, very, very nice. The sort of sound that the Audio Sense, the DT100 is capable of doing. Actually, the BA units from Audio Sense, be it the 100, the 200, the 300, the 600, all of them are phenomenal IEMs. Seriously, phenomenal IEMs. And of course, the DT300 and the DT600 benefited from using an impedance adapter to really extract the best of them out, in my opinion. But in terms of mid-range ability, the DT100 and the DT200, I mean, just phenomenal. The DT200, I still think, is probably one of the best mids IEM that I've ever heard. And I say this with full conviction, and I'm not the only one that a very let's say well-respected person in the audio world has also said exactly the same thing. DT200 has some of the most impressive mids that you will ever listen to. Okay, but anyway, DT100, nicely done bass. It's got this kind of, you look at this way this is done here in the mids to upper mid, it's got that kind of meta style of thing going here, and then dropping off some nice extension, not as much as you would lead to believe. It's got a nice organic warm kind of sound, which is decently detailed. Compared to the Fire, I prefer more the sound of the DT100 than the Fire, I'll be honest with you. This extra amount of energy that it has here on the Fire is just, it's not so much the lack of the bass energy, it's this extra amount of energy here that just doesn't gel with me as well. The next one that I'm going to put up now is the ST1 from GS Audio, something that very few people have heard about. Tremendously good sounding single BA, tremendously good sounding, very kind of similar to the DT100, as you can see, just a little bit tamer on purpose there, but they've actually been able to fetch some good extension past 10K, and you notice there's a bit more detail in terms of soundstage, openness of the sound up top there. Okay, very nicely done. Next one is the Magic one. Probably the one that has the most kind of atypical type of tuning for an all BA, for a single BA. You just don't expect it. You know, if you looked at it this, you wouldn't say it's an all BA. It's a single BA. You'd probably say it's something else, because it's got a nice amount of energy, of bass energy there. By no means am I saying it's, if this was a DD, that'd be a lot of bass. In a BA, it's not a lot of bass. Okay, but that matching, that balance has been really well done. Nice extension as well. Again, the amount of extension you see here is a little bit like on the case of the DT100 as well. It's not as much as you would think. Okay, it's got good extension, but the soundstage is still more cozy feeling, not so kind of studio concert venue style thing. Okay, and then finally the KOTORI, the Vampire. And by looking at it, you say to yourself, oh my god, Tony, but there's a huge valley there at 4 and 5 and 6K. It must sound like absolute no, honestly. And I'm being very, very honest here. I mean, honestly, guys, you guys know how I am. If I don't like it, I'll say it. Yes, it doesn't have the detail that you have on the DT100. Definitely doesn't have the same detail as on the ST1. But you know what? if I have to compare the Vampire with the Fire, for example, they are the two extremes here, okay? One overly bright, the one perhaps overly dark. I prefer the overly dark. I just prefer that warmer, richer sound that actually then lets the bass shine through a little bit more. And if anything, which wasn't the case, but if anything, if I wanted maybe just EQ just a smidge here, but then again, that's taking away from the whole point of this exercise of a single BA, I think. To get the ultimate little extra detail that I want, then to now complain. You know, single BAs, if I'm gonna make an analogy that some of you guys might be able to understand what I'm talking about. If you guys are familiar with single driver home speakers, so dual cone speakers, they were very popular in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Norelco, a whole bunch of them. Goodman, Celestion, Fostex, probably one of the most well-known brands. Fostex, Coral, phenomenal speakers. There's a whole bunch of now Chinese brands also making some very, very good stuff. Single BAs are akin with that style of speaker, but in a 3.5-inch size, so really small, where you have to make way more compromises between a lot of things than you would have on, for example, an 8-inch Fostex, where by virtue of its size, it already is going to have a good amount of bass, so you don't have to worry about too much about how the actual enclosure for the bass performance is going to be. What you have to worry about is how then the mids and upper mids are not overpowering that bass, because they have a tendency of being very energetic in that part of the spectrum, especially when they don't use any sort of networks to then control the way that the sound is then done, and so on and so forth. I don't want to get too involved here. On a 3.5-inch, which is the case what we have here, you have to use then an intelligent box design to get the bass that you want, and you have to make those compromises very, very evident, because for you to have one thing, you have to lose on the other. And the more you start compromising, the more you actually jeopardize the magic of the sound that specific speaker can give. There's one particular unit that I've used extensively in my projects of home speakers, which is the Tangbang, the WS381 from 371. No, sorry, 871 if I'm mistaken. You know, you'd be so impressed by how a subtle change of an enclosure can make it an absolute beast of a speaker, or then just completely throw it, you know, you want to just throw it away. And that's exactly what I find here. These compromises that have to be done here with single BAs are such that you need to, for example, compromise this part of the spectrum if you want to have a sound which is a little bit more warmer, a little bit more organic, a little bit more lush in the bass, and gives those vocals that nice richness. Because the small detail here for you guys to take, look at here compared with the DT100. It's basically the same thing as the DT100, just a little less extra energy there. That's all. And the sound between the two of them, yes, you notice there's more information here in this area of the DT100. Definitely. I'm not saying otherwise. And maybe more people will prefer that. But if you are sensitive to the higher frequencies, trust me, the Vampire will do the job very well done. It will. It definitely will. If you are a person that is very sensitive to this 5K area, 4, 5, 6K area, the Vampire will impress. It definitely will. And it will do it in a way which is probably, I dare say, better than if this was a single DD of, let's say, a 6mm size trying to do this. If this was a 6mm of this size, of a 6, you know, trying to, with a similar tuning, you would probably notice more this deficiency here on the single DD or on that 6mm driver than you would on the Vampire. All right. Anyway, guys, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask me. Take care now. Bye-bye.